Apologies. Welcome to the Belbin webinar. We're delighted that you could make it today. Today we're in conversation with Rhona Gibson from the University of Aberdeen, and we're really excited that she could come to share her experiences of using Belbin with her students. We're going to find out a little bit more about Rhona in a sec, but first of all, I think what we'd really like to do is find out a little bit more about you. So I've got a poll here, which I would very much like you to see. Can you see that on your screens? Oh, yes, you can, because people are answering it. Fantastic. So we just wanted to know whether or not you were involved in higher education, and do you use Belbin? Now, this is the tricky one. It's not, yes, I talk about the theory, those 9 team roles. I talk about the theory and I use the Belbin reports. Or no, I don't. So I'll just give that 5 more seconds there just to go on. Brilliant. Thank you very much all. Let's end that and let's share the results. So what we have is 64% of you, and there are still people coming in actually, who are involved in higher education. So Rhona, you'll be talking to like-minded people, people who have a passion for helping our young people be the best they possibly can. And do you use Belbin? Okay, so yes, the majority, just over 50%, you talk about the theory, but not so many of you actually use the reports as well, which is interesting. And what was that? 11% say no. Well, hopefully by the end of this, you'll be raring to start using Belbin. So thank you very much for that. The other thing I would very much like to do, and we've done this before, is just check your knowledge of Belbin, because when we have these conversations, I think it's really interesting to see the team roles, or the top 3 team roles at least, of the people who are joining us. So I'm going to put my team roles up here. For those who know me well, it's shaper, it's coordinator, it's resource investigator. So they are my top 3 team roles. Rhona, would you like to tell us your top 3 roles, please?
I'd be happy to. So my first one is plant. My second is team worker. And my third is specialist.
Wow. Oh, sorry. Perfect. So for those of you who know about Belbin, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to write in that lovely chat window how you think this conversation might go. This is the interesting one, you see. This is where you get the interesting feedback. And this is great, I think, because you know, people don't know us and they can start to really predict how they think we will behave when we're working together. So is anybody going to dare say anything? It should work well. Gary, thank you. Thank you. I know you're a high team worker, Gary, so Rhona will be all over the place and you will try and control her. Neil, thank you. We'd already guessed that. Very balanced profile mix, bound to be great. Thank you very much, Campbell. And I think you're right, we've almost got all of those 9 team roles, haven't we? Yep, Rhona has fun with ideas whilst Jo will keep things in order. I'll be organising it, Paul, yes, correct. Practical ideas to help us. I think we are going to have some practical ideas, aren't we, coming out of it?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, no, most definitely, most definitely.
I have to say that in the conversations that we've had, we have not run out of conversation when we've spoken.
No, we really haven't. And what you can't see here are my just pages and pages of notes that I've got should we need it. Okay, just a few more people here. Excellent. We will drive it and you're, yes. Yes, so it's good. I think we've got quite a good complement. We've got some opposites here, haven't we?
I think we do, yeah.
We should be okay. But, you know, enough about us. Enough about us. Enough about how we might behave. But just to say, actually, isn't that useful? Isn't that a useful thing to do? Because already we know how, well, I know how I need to adjust. You don't need to adjust because you're our guest. To be able to make the most out of this conversation. Right. Rhona, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
I'm so delighted to have you with us because this is going to be such an interesting conversation. I don't want to introduce you. I don't want to tell everybody what you do. I'm going to be quiet. Introduce yourself and tell us, you know, what is your role at the university and what is it that you love most about what you do?
Okay. So I am part of the Careers and Employability team at the University of Aberdeen, and I'm one of the careers advisors there. We have a fantastic team. I absolutely love working in it, and I've been at the university since 2007. Over the last couple of years, as part of, well, I guess like an extra project to do, I have been responsible for the university's Leadership Academy. And this is one of our co-curricular activities. So this is a supplementary activity that students can do to enhance their university experience, but it doesn't come with academic credit or anything like that. But because the university takes this seriously, we will note it on their transcript at the end that they have participated in the Leadership Academy. I think one of the benefits of it as well is that students don't have to have had any previous experience in leadership, or they may have had significant experience. We take it as, you know, a starting point, a blank sheet. They attend workshops and they do a reflective piece at the end. We'll probably talk a bit more about the Leadership Academy later. What do I love most about my job? I love the team I work with. They're pretty fab, but I absolutely adore working with students, either in individual interactions and getting to know my caseload students. I've got 3 specific academic schools that I'm responsible for, but I also really enjoy the teaching aspect of standing up in front of the room and delivering a session, and just that moment when you know that you've got them and there's that sort of energy in the room, which I absolutely love. So, and I think as well, the other thing that I've really enjoyed is seeing how we've transitioned in the last 3 months. I think there's been so much positive stuff that's come out of that. And, you know, I think an example of that is our session today, because we've got people from Texas all the way through to Bahrain. I love that. I love the fact that we can, you know, have that sort of global conversation. And in fact, one of the other things that I got to do this year, that I'm sure that this will come up later as well, is that in February I travelled out to our other campus in Qatar, and I was able to deliver a Belbin session to the students who are studying there. So that was mega fun, and I really enjoyed that. Does that answer your question? And did I go off tangent at all? Because I know some of the people in the notes were a bit concerned that I would go blah, blah, blah.
Well, I don't think so. I think that was wonderful. So you have your caseload of students from an academic point of view, and you also have this Leadership Academy.
Yes.
And
yes.
Just explain again, because I found this fascinating when you said it's across different faculties.
Yeah, so students self-select. If they would like to apply to participate, they can. And we encourage every student to participate. So we could have a first-year divinity student, we could have a postgrad engineer, we could have a final year, I don't know, politics, you name it. And when they come to do the workshops and they're doing group activities, they're all around the table and they have that conversation. They've never met each other before, but they're working in a really sort of holistic way together. It's across all subjects, and they leave their subject behind, and it's what they can bring to the table. And I think that's really important, because that's kind of like a life skill going forward. So, and can I also just say a shout out to Campbell, who's here, who is a fantastic friend of the Career Service, and yeah, I just want to say hi, Campbell.
Campbell, did you want to say hello? Are you okay?
Hi.
Hi, that's fine.
It came up in the chat.
Oh, there you go. Sorry,
hello all. Thank you for the name check and the wave. I'm honoured and privileged. I'll leave you to it. More interesting people to hear from than myself.
Perfect, but it's lovely that you could join us, Campbell. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I would love to do now is to ask you to tell me more about the Leadership Academy.
So the Leadership Academy runs in each semester uniquely. It's a self-contained unit. And we encourage all our students, if they wish to apply to participate. And they apply, and then they undertake 3 workshops that are themed around leadership. And then at the end, they complete a reflective assessment on what they've particularly enjoyed. And they also undertake a SWOT analysis based on what they've done. And basically that's it. What we've done, and I think if you'd like to maybe show the first slide,
certainly.
Is I can show you what the aims overall are.
there we go.
So students know here that they can explore their own leadership style. They can look at how these impact on teams and individuals. They've got that reflection opportunity, and we also let them think about what they're going to do next as a result of taking part. And I just added a wee photo here. This is me in Qatar in February of this year. That was the last week of February. And I was delivering a Belbin Get Set workshop there to the students who are studying out there as part of, they run the Leadership Academy out there as well as a sort of parallel initiative to us. It's coordinated by my careers advisor colleague who's based on the Doha campus. So I went out to do that for them, and that was a lot of fun. If you'd like to go on to the second slide though, I can also show you that the Leadership Academy is very much based on our Aberdeen graduate attributes. And like many higher education institutes, we have a range of attributes that we want our graduates to achieve at the end of their time with us. And when we were looking at the Leadership Academy and what we want to do with that, we chose 3 employability related graduate attributes that they would work to. So those are the 3 of them there. When students apply at the start, they undertake a short questionnaire, the answers of which are part of a Likert scale of how confident are you, basically on a scale of 1 to 4 about, and then there's a range of questions within these 3 categories. And that's really useful because we ask them the exact same questionnaire at the end, and then we can have a look at their learning gain through that. So that's kind of it. But the other thing we try and do is this year we've put them into our virtual learning environment, and we've had an online community for them where they've been able to answer any questions that might have come up. They've been able to chat to each other. We've been able to ask some icebreaker type questions and to give them a place to be online together as a community, which was cool. So
wow.
Yeah, so
yes.
In a nutshell, that's Leadership Academy at the University of Aberdeen.
Perfect. No, and I think that's wonderful, isn't it? So in other words, it's not just from one area, it's from the whole of the university. Anybody who's interested in leadership, interested in themselves, they're putting their subject to one side, and then you are looking and assessing against these 3 criteria. So it's not just a nice to have, it's something that you're measuring because you want to help those students develop all of these particular graduate attributes, because they are, like I say, related to employability. They're the things that are going to help them
absolutely,
in the longer term.
Yeah.
So how does Belbin, what part does Belbin play here? I mean, why did you decide to bring Belbin here? I'll stop sharing my screen.
Cool. So we were keen to involve Belbin because we had previously encountered it as staff at the university, and we had a colleague in staff development there who had, helped us with various stuff before that was Belbin related. So that was great, and we agreed with her that she would come and do some sessions with us. And alongside that being a plan, I had an idea, and I'm very fortunate that I have a positive head of department who is a yes person if it's appropriate. And I said to her, I've got this great idea. If we do Leadership Academy, we could then create a separate award that they could go on to and do afterwards, which is an ILM2 award in leadership and team skills. But that kind of required a bit of Belbin knowledge in that. But that's no problem because we've got this colleague in staff development who can run the workshops for us. For that, all is good. And then she left.
It's always that, isn't it? Everything goes so well, and then.
So Campbell, fellow Campbell, was brilliant, and he'd come in and he'd done a couple of Belbin sessions for us because he is the Belbin guy in Aberdeen as well. And we're very grateful to him for doing that. But I spoke to my head of department. It's like, well, what do we do? Because she's left and we now don't have anybody in the university who can do this. So my head of department said, well, can you get accredited? And 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to London and thinking, gosh, that was amazing. And I ended up pitching up in London to the Belbin accreditation training.
Which is fantastic, isn't it? Because I think sometimes we have these wonderful plans, don't we? We have these 2-3 year strategies about what we're doing. But when it comes down to it, it's always based on need. isn't
Exactly.
it? We need to have it. Have we got anybody? No. And it's amazing how quick, and it's like just now over the last 3 months, you know, the need's been there. Oh my goodness, we react quickly, don't we?
Exactly. So I did the 4-day course. I really enjoyed it. I found it quite challenging, I think partly because I was suddenly working outside the higher education bubble. And one of the benefits of the course was that I was with a range of people from totally different industries, and, you know, and that was really good for conversation during the course. I got to sit an exam again. I hadn't done that for 20 odd years. So
I know some
fun.
people get really scared about that, but it's fun, isn't it? Yes, the exam is fun. Yes.
Yeah. So did that, and it was lovely. We were such a tight little group by the end of it. I really enjoyed it. And then came back, and basically the next week went straight into delivering Belbin, more or less. I think as well because we then had a period of about 6 months where I was the only person in the uni who was Belbin accredited. So that was quite cool because I got the odd call out from HR to just help for 1 or 2 things. And I really enjoyed that to sort of, because my professional life is so student focused, I really enjoyed the opportunity to sort of have a peek into the other side of life. And then subsequently, I've now got 2 more colleagues in the university who are also Belbin folks. And that's really lovely because we've got our own wee support network. And
you can learn from each other, can't you? Which is wonderful. You can share.
Exactly, yeah, and brainstorm with each other. So at that stage, we were delivering sort of the traditional Belbin reports, and we decided to have a review of that at the end of that semester. And in consultation with yourself, we had some good chat, some good advice. We decided to switch. So for this session, just finishing now, we've run the Belbin Get Set reports, and I really, really like them, and I found them really positive for going forward.
Thank you. And just for those people who don't know the difference between the 2 reports, is that we have our normal standard Belbin reports for people who've had work experience, for people who know what it's like to work within a team. But we found actually, like Rhona said, you know, these are for students. They may not have worked, you know, in industry or whatever. They may be 19-year-olds, they may be older, but we wanted the language to be a bit more accessible. We wanted the questions, the self-perception inventory to be more accessible, to mean something to them. But the reports as well, they're more like a workbook. They are less of these are your team roles and here's some advice and guidance on how to use. There's space to get the pen out and to write, well, what does this mean to me?
Yes.
So it's a far more practical workbook as opposed to the reports on the other side. So you used those. How did you implement Belbin? So could you talk us through one of your sort of Belbin workshops? Could you talk us through what you do? I think people would be fascinated.
So I run a 2-hour workshop for our students, and beforehand they need to have completed the Belbin Get Set report, but they don't get to see it. Okay. So so they're told you'll get this at the workshop. So, wow, gosh, what do we do? We first of all start off by asking them what kind of team have you been in before, and then sort of what are the strengths and weaknesses that you've experienced in a team. And then I get them to do a wee game. And I shamelessly borrowed this from a careers advisor training event I went to at BAFTA in London. Can I just say this is really the only 2 times I've been to London in any recent. So I've made the most of it and brought it back into life. But one of the things that BAFTA were talking about that day was the creative industries and how important graduates from all areas are in the creative industries. And they gave me, they gave us all a goodie bag. Gotta love a goodie bag. And in that was a card game. So I have brought this into the Belbin workshop, and I don't know if you want to show my cards. So what I get them to do is I tell them that in their small teams of between 4 and 6 people around the table, I want them to create a brand new computer game, and they each select a different coloured card for their table. So each table's got a different set, and then I give them 20 minutes to come up with something which would bring in these kind of rules, if you like. So this is what they've kind of got to work with. So I tell them it's 20 minutes, but then at the 15-minute mark, I interrupt them to say that I've changed my mind and I would like them to deliver a presentation in 5 minutes' time about what they've come up with. They need to have a name for their game, how much is the budget for it, who's their stakeholders, who's their audience, and so on. So that kind of throws them a bit.
That's a you cruel woman. You cruel woman. But that's when we get to see people under pressure, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So then in their team, they've got to come up with that, and then they present that to the rest of the group, and then they can all vote for the best one, but you can't vote for your own. And the ones who win, if they're really lucky, they will get a selection of chocolates from the back of the careers service cupboard that we've managed to find just before the workshop, because we know how to treat them well. So we've done that. And then what we do after that is we go into what the 9 team roles are. And we introduce those one by one, or I introduce those one by one. And I think what's really interesting there is that as you go through each of them, you know, you can, the first one that we look at is the plant, which I'm a plant. You know, we say, you know, this is somebody who has lots of ideas, which is really great, but some of their ideas can be unsound, and you need somebody to come in, and you can see people thinking, yeah, I can kind of get that. And as you go through to, for example, the completer finishers, you know, they're really great at the fine detail, but then I might say, so, you know, might you be a completer finisher? Do you struggle to submit your essay without checking it one final time to make sure that that's just absolutely perfectly done? So I go through all of the team roles with them, and then at the end of that point, I will hand out their reports and give them a few minutes to digest that at the tables. And then we look at the opposites and where for example, a plant who has lots of ideas might be really complemented by an implementer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've got somebody who can have the ideas and somebody who can actually make them happen, which is cool. And then I ask them to have a look at them as a team. So I give them the team circle that you're using at the moment. And in their tables, I ask them to put their initials in against their top 2. And then to have a think about that and to reflect upon, well, did you have a gap? So when I look at that, I see that you and I have quite a gap in the bottom third of that.
Yes.
Yeah, so that might be where we don't have anything just now. But that's really interesting whenever you then go around the room and you say, so how did you get on? Did you have a gap? And sometimes you've got people who go, yeah, we had nobody in, for example, the action-orientated roles. We were all the others. So we just went round and round in circles. So that's been quite interesting.
Okay.
I also, one of the things I really liked that you guys have created is your Belbin guide too, and you did one which was perfect for me time-wise in the first semester at Halloween about how to carve your pumpkin.
Yes. Oh yes, I remember that one. Yes.
Yes, and we go through that, and they love that, and there's been a lot of laughter about where they fit into the carving pumpkins, and you can really see them nodding as well when we go through that. I then give them a few minutes just themselves to have a look through the report. And I don't know if you could bring up the Get Set report.
Of course.
And I don't know if you could just maybe run through what it looks like, and then we could maybe stop on page 4 if that's okay.
Of course. Let me just put that back up to page 1. Okay, so here we go. I'll let you talk. You tell me when to click.
Yeah, that's okay. So they get this summary at the beginning, which shows the graph. Now, one of the things I didn't say at the outset is that when you're doing a Belbin report, there's 2 ways of doing it. You've got your personal responses to the questions, and then ideally you want to get 4 to 6 people to be your observer assessment to give you the objective view of who you are. And I think that's where the huge value comes in. But for our students, that's not possible because they've not met each other before. They're only coming together for this 1 2-hour session, and then they're going to go their separate ways. So we only do the self-perception inventory. And that will bring up a graph like this, where they can see what their top roles are. A lot of the time they agree, sometimes they don't, but then we can say, well, if you'd had an observer come in, that might have changed the columns around a little bit. Please, could you move it down a little bit? Yeah. And then one of the things I really like about this is that you've got a little box here, how do you think you can best show your strengths? And it gives you that time for reflection. It's identified personally at the top. It's got their own name on it. They love getting the takeaway reports, and they love the fact that it's personalised to them. So I give them time here to fill in these boxes, because otherwise, you and I both know what it's like. We mean to do it, but it goes onto the good intentions pile.
Absolutely.
So we do this in the session. If we could just come then down to page 4, I think, because there's narrative there about, what it is.
This one
I
here?
think it was this one, yeah. How to handle interviews. I really like this part of it because it's giving you a way of articulating where your strengths are and where they can sort of really think about that in relation to themselves. And then at the end of the report, it gives you thoughts about handling interviews. And then finally, if you were doing a personal statement, that's relevant to us because some of our undergraduates are keen to then go on to postgrad study. And a lot of what we do is advise on personal statements. So it's giving a context as well for what they've learned in the workshop into something very practical afterwards. Nice. So we get them to take some time to complete that. And then after they've done that, we're usually rushing up to the end of the session at that point. I ask them to answer a strengths-based interview question just in their small groups.
Now I'm going to stop you here. Hang on, I'm just going to stop you because this was I didn't know what this meant, and I've written it down. A strengths-based interview question. You know, when you said it, because I don't know anything that much about higher education, this was quite new to me. I didn't know kind of what this sort of interview question sort of alluded to. Do you want to give a little bit of...
Sure. So strength-based interview questions are used to show what you enjoy doing, and employers are using it to see if you're a good match for a role down the line, okay?
Okay.
So it's what you enjoy rather than what you can do, which is more competency-based. So a competency interview question would be, tell me about a time when you worked in a team and you had a difficult situation, how did you overcome it, okay?
Okay.
But what I do is I choose 2 strength-based questions that they can answer. I say, do you most like starting tasks or finishing them?
Okay.
And the other one I ask them is, what are you good at?
Oh, that's not an immediate answer one, is it? That's a real...
So the thing about strengths-based ones is they're actually pretty hard to prepare for.
No,
so that's another reason why graduate employers are using them as an effective interview tool. So we get them to answer that, but they've just done this workshop, so they've been able to see what they're good at. So, I'm good at having lots of ideas. I'm good at working in a team situation because I'm a team worker, so I'm quite a perceptive person. I can kind of see what's going on around the table. So having just done this, that's not so scary a question.
No, absolutely not. So they can start using these things.
Exactly.
These statements here. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been really positive, I think, and a really good way of bringing the Belbin back to the student and then the application of that into the next stages.
See, I love that because the strength-based questions are really showing what's your potential, aren't they? Where can you grow? Where's your growth? So as an employer, you can't tell me what you can, you don't know what you can do yet, but we can try and assess your potential, where you might be, how you could grow within our firm, our organisation, and how we can make the most of your strengths. So that's making it that real sort of employability aspect, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, crikey, you get quite a lot into your session. So just to recap, let me just stop sharing my screen there. So to recap, everybody completes just the self-perception inventory.
Yes.
They get their reports. You hold them tight. You don't show them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You then talk about teams in general. And then you set them the exercise of coming up with this computer game where they have 15 to 20 minutes, and then you put the pressure on 5 minutes towards the end and tell them what they need to present back. And only after here do you then talk about those 19 roles and you give their reports back and give them time to reflect.
Yes.
At that point, I'm really interested, do you get many aha moments because they've already had the exercise, they've worked as a team for 15, 20 minutes. They had the pressure on, so all of their best intentions went to the wayside and they were probably, as they normally are, because we can always put our best suits on for a little while, can't we, when we're working with others?
Exactly.
So you put the pressure on, so those suits have come off. Do you get many going, oh, so that explains why we didn't do so well? Oh, that explains why. Do you get that sort of link?
Yes, but one of the advantages is because the students are drawn from all different courses, they don't know each other. So they've got the space there to be more honest.
That's
and when
true.
they get that and they talk through it, you do get the aha. I mean, I've had people who are basically sitting there shaking their heads, and I'm like, are you okay? Because I go around and just check there, and they're like, this is exactly me. And, you know, I'm just reading myself here, you know, which is great. One of the things that has come back anecdotally, and in fact, we might sort of see a bit of this later, because I know I've given you some quotes to show later, is students have said, I kind of get it now, because a lot of what we do in Aberdeen is they have to, similar to other unis, is there's a lot of group work, and they, in many courses, they have to go into small groups and create something which is assessed. And it can be a huge source of stress. They've got to go off and work together in this small group. And they've had a real aha moment, realizing, well, this is me, and I'm not good at that. And what I think what the advantage of Belbin is to have that understanding of, this is my strength, but because that's the weakness associated with the role, I need to, in a team situation, let somebody else do that.
Yeah.
And that way we're going to work better together. And I think they have gone out with that sense of, so I can do this, and be aware that other people, if they seem to be more pernickety about things, maybe they're a completer finisher, and therefore we play to their strengths too. And by all playing to each other's strengths, we can do that.
I think that's quite key, isn't it? Because I think we see it quite a lot, as if you're being assessed for something, it changes the environment a little, doesn't it? If you know that you're being assessed on the impact that you're making, your contribution you're making to the team, and perhaps how the team does overall, is that if we don't understand our Belbin team role strengths, if we don't understand what we're bringing to the team, sometimes we could just try and be everything.
Exactly.
Couldn't we? We could try, and we'd overstretch ourselves, and perhaps we wouldn't put ourselves in the right light, because we're going to be trying to do things that really aren't us.
Exactly.
So this allows people just to say, look, this is the best me, I'm contributing where I can make the most positive impact. And because I'm kind of aware of the roles now, I can say to other people, why don't you do this perhaps, or encourage others to make their contributions. Yeah.
Definitely.
So I'm just remembering back to like a 15-year-old me at school, and you can see my team roles. I'm like taking over, trying to do everything. I'm just remembering and thinking, actually, if I'd known a little bit more about contributions to the team, I'd have sat back sometimes. I'd have sat back and let other people to do their bit.
And that's the other thing that we say to them as well, is that, you know, we really stress that, you know, Belbin is behaviour based, and that your behaviours can change, unlike your personality. You know, you're either going to be a lark or an owl. You know, you can't really change that, that's set. But your behaviours at work can change. And one of the things I have said is, you know, it is likely that in the future you'll do this again.
Absolutely.
But you'll do the formal Belbin report, and you may have moved, and the graph might not be the same. And that just shows what development opportunities you've had, where you've had to learn a role that you haven't done previously. And that's okay, because we do evolve and we do move in our behaviours. Yeah,
and in fact, I want to say we should be moving, because we need to be able to make the most of our situations, don't we? So, okay, so this is the exercise that they do all together. What are the outcomes? Because this is something that people always ask, is, you know, what's the so what towards the end of it? You know, what impact has it had on the students who are attending the Leadership Academy? And before you answer, if anybody has any questions, I forgot to say this at the beginning, please do write them in that chat window so that I can ask Rhona as and when. So if you've got any questions that you're holding in your head, just type away. But in the meantime, what were those outcomes?
So do you mean for the Belbin workshop as a whole, or how that applies to the Leadership Academy?
Both.
Okay. So just to sort of bring in the question that's just popped up, around 30 students would attend, 20 to 30, depending on where we are, because sometimes it is limited by the number of seats we have. 20 to 30, would attend any one session, which allows us to do groups of 4 to 6. The feedback we've had from the individual sessions is kind of verbal on the day, where, as I was just sharing, you know, they get that aha moment.
Yes.
Within the Leadership Academy as a whole, at the end of the session, they do this reflective piece where they have to choose one of their 3 workshops and talk about how that has contributed to their development of their understanding of leadership. And we've had a lot of people choose the Belbin one in particular because it's given them that self-awareness of where their individual strengths and weaknesses lie, and how they want to sort of think about that further and apply that into future semesters. I mentioned earlier about our learning gain, and when they apply at the beginning, they self-select answers. At the end, we do it again, and we ask them why their answers might have changed. And Belbin features a lot there. And we've created a little graphic of that, hot off the press, which we can show whenever you want to.
Yeah, I say
I'm just seeing there's some questions coming out.
You're right. Ignore those questions. I will deal with the questions. Yeah,
perfect.
You are the guest. We're not having you. Right. So these were those. Let's see.
So these are the graduate attributes that and then within that, there's like 4 or 5 questions under each one, and they self-select that. So then this is what we have just analysed for this academic year. So if we look at the left-hand one, you'll see that not very many students have said they're not confident at all, which is pretty good. But quite a few pinks have said they're not very confident. And I just put a wee bubble around the leadership skills to develop and the personal leadership strengths at the bottom, because I felt these were quite relevant to Belbin. There are other ones too about like communicating team activities, but I thought they were quite nice at the bottom too. But if we look over to the one on the right, after participation, we can see the blues have pretty much all disappeared.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And also, so has the not very confidence have hugely reduced. But what we have seen is that students feel much more confident about their leadership skills and where their strengths lie. So I think we take that as a win.
I think you should take that as a massive win. I think that's incredible. And to be able to compare that as well and have that questionnaire before and after is really valuable, isn't it? Because otherwise it is anecdotal.
Yeah.
Whereas this is showing, look, this is what we had before, this is after. And this is all of the students within that year's...
within the Leadership Academy, yeah.
So that would be about
120 or so.
Yeah. So it's not
in a semester. It varies a bit, but it varies between sort of 80 and 150. Yeah. So
okay. So these are looking at good numbers that have changed there. Wow. And did you have these before Belbin? I mean, I should imagine they were awful, weren't they?
I'm trying to remember. I think we've only brought in the Learning Gain Review. So the Leadership Academy is one of our co-curricular activities. We have a whole programme of them. We have the Career Mentoring Programme. We have our Students Taking Active Roles Award, which is, you know, if you're, I don't know, president of the rowing club, we can do stuff for you for there. So we've got a range of co-curricular activities. And within, it'll be about the last 2 or 3 years, we've started doing this learning gain so that we can show the impact that our intervention as a career service is having upon the student community.
Yeah, I think that's just wonderful, isn't it?
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, right. Let's stop sharing that screen. Okay. Wow. I'm just going to go through some of these questions now. This is an interesting one. I know that we chatted about this as well. Do you connect with the students later to see how useful the Belbin tool was? Well, it's a bit difficult at the moment because this is the first cohort that's gone through, isn't it?
Well, this would be the 3rd semester that we've just completed with the Belbin ones. We tend to only really connect with them during the semester that it is done within. But within the term that's just gone, we had our own area on our VLE, so we were able to have discussion board activities there where people could sort of chat about it. Yeah, it tends to be a sort of self-selecting group, and then there's a new group coming in, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. Thank you. Okay, somebody came a bit. No, that's fine. So the teams, this is what I'd like to ask actually, is when you've got those 20 to 30 students for each Belbin session that you run and you put them into the teams, what size of teams did you say? About 6 and 4 to 6?
Between 4 and 6, yes.
Yeah. And that's the optimum, isn't it? Go, what's your reason? Come on, you tell us.
Because according to, now I would actually pull it out, but I can't because my iPad will fall off if I do so. But I have Belbin's book under my iPad, which says that the optimum team size is 4 to 6 people. So I deliberately put them into groups of 4 to 6. One of the things that I haven't said is that during this semester, well, it was all a bit fun because we were all ticking along nicely until the middle of March.
Weren't we all? Yes.
And then, I don't know if you heard about this, but we had to start working from home. And we were still in the middle of running workshops, and Belbin was one of the ones that we were running. So we had to overnight switch to delivering everything online. And I put my Belbin workshop online, which is why I had the photo of the cards. And we've run that in pretty much the same way, but we were still able to operate breakout groups this time.
Yes.
And they can work in breakout groups within the classroom area that we have online. So they can still, even though they're not physically in the room, they're getting the same experience.
That's wonderful. So this is translatable to an online environment.
Completely,
it doesn't have to be classroom.
Yeah. And actually, as a result of that, we've made the decision that we'll definitely be doing the Belbin type workshops online next semester too.
Wonderful.
Just until we know what's happening.
Well, once you know, please let us know as well. Nobody's got any idea, have they? So that's really interesting. So it translated well to an online. You kept that 4 to 6, and I'd just like to say here that the second you get over that 6, you start going to 8 or 10 people. What you find is people are disengaged because there's too many people involved. So what you want to really try and do is to keep those numbers small to ensure that everybody's making a contribution. I know that I've worked in the past with just a couple of colleges, and I've sort of been observing teams being put together when there's been like 12, 15, and you can guarantee half of them are on their phone because there's no reason for them to engage because they can hide or what have you. So keeping it small, I think, is ever so important, isn't it? Really, really important. Okay. Is there anything you do to utilise the learning from Belbin to help students in a career advice context? For example, enhancing their CV, preparing for interviews, etc.
So the report really lends itself to preparing for interviews and also can pull out their strengths, which can help in the CV. At the end of each session, they would have a verbal invitation to come in and see us if they want to talk about, you know, we do a lot of CVs, we do a lot of interview prep. So we would build that in if needs be. But again, when you're doing a CV, you've got to be careful in the language that you use so that it's right for the employer that you're going to. So we might really look at the positive attributes that they've learned about themselves and use that as a focus to put on their CV rather than saying, I'm a shaper.
Well, yes, because you're making a massive assumption that anybody knows
that
term.
So,
you're using jargon. You don't want to use jargon, do you?
So what we want to do is to take the strengths of that and incorporate that into their skills and experiences that they've developed while at uni.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do you mind if I just go through some of these questions?
No, please.
Okay. Right, brilliant. Okay, so you're putting the teams together. They're in small sizes between 4 and 6. It's about 20 or 11. They don't know their team roles first. Do you use your knowledge of the team roles to put the teams together?
No.
No, you don't. So they're just random. They self-select.
They self-select. They sit down at the table. And it's wherever they've sat down, that's the team they're going to be in. And whenever they're online, I've got a button to click that will automatically assign them into however many breakout groups I need them to. So again, I don't know, they just go. But I think that's okay because then I'm not artificially making sure that each of the, thinking, action,
social, social, thinking, action, social.
That's it. Yeah. I'm not making sure that all 9 areas are covered. And that's where we bring in the wheel to say what was missing.
Yeah.
And, who might you have needed to bring in? If you could have had somebody from a different table, would that have changed things?
Perfect. And in a way, one could argue that's more real life, isn't it? We very rarely have the luxury to choose everybody who's joining a team based on their team roles. Okay. You mentioned you delivered to international students. Were there any sort of challenges there in terms of cultural differences? Because I forget where you went now. You
Qatar.
Qatar,
yeah. It was my first time that I've ever been to the Middle East, so I think culturally, when you go anywhere for the first time, it's like, oh, I don't know. I think students are the same everywhere. I think if there was a difference in Qatar, it's a slightly different setup in that the students actually already knew each other. So as opposed to a group of strangers coming together for this one session, they'd seen each other the day before. So there was a different kind of vibe because they were already a little community.
Yes.
But no, they were a good bunch, and yeah, it was terrific. I really enjoyed it. So.
That's wonderful. And that photograph shows, doesn't it? The one that we showed at the beginning showed you there enjoying it. And, we've found there's very little difference.
Yeah, my colleagues call that my action shot.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think everybody needs one in a slide deck, don't they, to show this is actually me. I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's real, honestly.
Yeah, wonderful. We've got quite a few questions here which are more around Get Set. And what I'd like to do, I don't want to go into Rhona's time because we've only got a few minutes left, is I will answer those questions on an email that I'll send out to everybody afterwards, because that's all the detail that we don't need to necessarily go into now. Okay, so somebody would like to know, you talked about the SWOT analysis. How does that fit in with the Belbin? You have the SWOT analysis as part of your leadership academy.
So they do that, yeah, as an overview at the end,
Right.
and they've reviewed the workshops they've attended. They've looked at what their leadership skills, how they've developed those, and then at the end they've got the chance to do a SWOT to sort of see where they're going next. Belbin can come into that. Sometimes we see the team role coming into that within the strengths and the weaknesses.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Which is quite nice. As an implementer, I've discovered that. And you can see sometimes the reflection there of how that might impact on both their curricular and co-curricular activities going forward. And the one that we've just done, the big threat was they were all really worried about 2020 and what the impact of that is on their immediate plans.
No,
so,
understandably.
Yeah.
Understandably. This is quite interesting because we have I'd say about 4 or 5 minutes left. There are lots of questions still coming through, but that's fine. I think we're going to park those for a bit, and all of those I think that we can answer separately, because as you guessed, as we predicted, this could go on for a very long time, this conversation. And I haven't even got to page 2 of my notes yet that we made when we've been chatting before. Because it's so interesting. But what I would love to know, can we share that last slide with people?
Yes.
Can we do that? Because that, I think, is, again, looking at those outcomes, isn't it? That's So that's
the slide that's...
Hang on.
The slide that's just coming is going to show you one of my workshops. So that's one of my little groups, and they've just received their Belbin reports, and they're just going through those. And they've got a time to reflect on it individually, but they're also looking over each other's shoulders.
Yeah, I was about to say, I like that. Somebody's peering over to see what somebody else has got on there, haven't they? Yeah.
But I just picked out 3 pieces of feedback that we had from this academic year. So I'll just let you have a look at that. So I like the first one because, it really looks at the strengths and weaknesses. But I think the second one, I really like that for spotting the tasks I would perform at best in the team. And I thought that was really interesting in, they actually want to get going with this and, take on a
It's not just of interest. They want to do something with it. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we've had some really nice feedback from the students.
That's wonderful. So that, along with the slide before, looking at the changes that had been made in looking at the student learning gain as well. So combined with that, it's been a real positive experience with your students. Okay, so you had to become Belbin accredited because somebody left. And what you wanted to do, as opposed to just working with your caseloads of students, part of this leadership academy, and you wanted to be able to work with students from all over the university to bring them together to help develop their leadership skills, which would also lead on, we hope at some point, to the ILM level 2 qualification. Thank you. To do this, you put together a workshop which really did show the concept of team working, and then showed them the idea of Belbin, but then used their Get Set reports. And this is where the meat of it came to be able to understand each other, and give them this language, because they're writing in these workbooks. You know, what does this mean? So what? So what that these are my roles? What does it mean? What am I going to do with them? And how can I project that going forward? So then, because you'd measured before and after, you then have some wonderful idea about how successful it's being. Is the Leadership Academy doing what it was meant to achieve? Is it what it set out to do? And I think, looking at everything here, at least the answer to that is yes, isn't it?
I think so too, yes. I'm quite excited about it, and I'm looking forward, you know, we're still making plans for how we're going to adapt it into next session, and bring it on.
Absolutely, bring it on indeed. Thank you so much for joining us, Rhona. That has been absolutely...
Jo, it's been my pleasure, and thank you too to the team at Belbin, because you guys have been so helpful, and you know, there's been times when I've rung you up and asked for just a bit of advice about this. Thank you, because I've really appreciated that.
Hey, no problem. That's what we're here for. So, are you going to use Belbin next year? I forgot to ask. You are. There you go. I think that says it all, really, doesn't it? So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. For everybody who's put all your questions there, I will hopefully make sure that I've got copies of them all and be able to answer them. And please do keep your eyes out for an email from team@belbin.com. It will have a recording and all of the links that you need. Rhona, you're on LinkedIn?
I am, yes.
Yes, there we go. Happy to connect, because if that... Well, plant teamwork, of course you are, and will be incredibly helpful with any of your questions. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you.